Well, we're going to be talking about the work of leaders this morning. And I know that many of you have taken the work of leaders assessment, so that's a great introduction. I'm glad you had the opportunity to do that. And when we talk about leadership and the work of leaders, this is actually a program that took us about 6 years to develop. And we really set out to build a leadership program that would make sense to people. But there's so much that's out there with leadership. We kind of really didn't want to reinvent the wheel or restart something. So we began by actually doing research. Down here on the bottom, we did a literature review, which means we read everything we could get our hands on. And there's a lot of leadership books that are out there, a lot of leadership articles, journal articles. So we read for about a year. There were 4 co-authors, Barry Davis, Mark Scullard, Susie Kukkonen, and myself. And we read and shared ideas. And some of the things that we read, we were really looking for fresh ideas, for things that made sense to people. We wanted to help people understand how to lead in a way that people would want to follow them. Because without followers, you're not a leader. You're not leading anybody if people are not following you. So we made sure that we were reading a wide range of things. So we read some things that we would consider more traditional or more classic, like Warren Bennis or Peter Drucker. And then we read things that were considered a little more contemporary, like Seth Godin's Tribes, which is all about how people come together and sometimes a leader emerges out of that group of people. We read things that are more academic focused, like Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline. And we also read things that were more consulting based. Patrick Lencioni is an author in the US. He's one of Wiley's authors, and he comes out of the consulting world. So his approach was much more of a consultative leadership approach. We read things out of the nonprofit sector, another Wiley author, Frances Hesselbein. And we read things that were out of the more corporate. Harry Kramer is another Wiley author. He came out of the healthcare industry, and then he moved into private equity. So he has much more of a corporate perspective than others might. We read things that were more philosophical based, John Maxwell. And then Kouzes and Posner, another Wiley book, they take much more of a research base. So we read and we talked and we shared ideas and we considered what things made sense. What was interesting is sometimes what one leadership guru would say would totally contradict what another leadership guru would say. And sometimes one leadership author would take a deep dive down into just one aspect of leadership. Like Ram Charan wrote an entire book just on execution, on how to get things done as a leader. And as we read all of this, we kept asking ourselves, how do we make sense out of all of this? How do we put a leadership program in the hands of leaders so that they can lead without overthinking things, without having to look at the book and say, what do I do next? It had to be intuitive, something that you would think about quickly and easily. We also wanted to look at personality and leadership. We're the publishers of the Everything DISC assessment, so we know that personality is really important. And we wanted to understand, how does personality relate to leadership? And there's definitely a relationship, but it's not such that you can predict. If you know someone's personality style, you can't predict whether they will be an effective or an ineffective leader. The correlation isn't that good. But it does influence how you lead. So that was important to us. We also looked at 360 data. Have you ever taken a 360 where people give you input? Your boss might rate you, your colleagues or your peers might rate you, the people who report to you might let you know how you're doing. So we have all this data because about 1 million people every year take one of our assessments. So we have a lot of data to look at. And we had all this data with followers. 81,000 comments that followers said about their leaders. Well, that's a lot of data, right? How do you analyze 81,000 comments? We hired a university student. I said, here, analyze this data for us. This is a good project for you. And he actually took those 81,000 comments and got them down to 24,000 unique comments. So from there, we were actually really looking at, what do people want in a leader? What do they want their leader to do? And the top 3 things I thought would be interesting to show you. So the top 3 things from a leader's standpoint, a follower would say, I wish my leader would be more active about finding new opportunities. Your followers want you to look at new opportunities. They want you to explore new things. They want you to be out there. They want you to be ahead of the game. They also said, I wish my leader would focus more on improving our methods. They look to you as a leader for improving productivity, for improving efficiencies, for making things run. And then lastly, the number 3 request was, I wish my leader would do more to rally people to achieve goals. People want you to inspire them. People want to follow a leader who's going exciting places and doing things that make a difference. So those were the top 3 requests from followers, and we thought that was important. We also look at training trends. And again, we have a million people over a year who take one of our assessments. So oftentimes, after you take an assessment from Wiley, we ask you if you'd like to participate in a research study. Maybe you experienced this when you took your assessment. So you finish your assessment and then you answer some questions. And we get over 90% of people who say, sure, I'll participate in your research study. So we gathered data about what topics do people want training on. The number 1 requested topic, probably not a surprise, is leadership. But what's interesting about this is we decided to look at who said this. And we have the ability to look at, are they new leaders? Are they young? Are they seasoned or more mature? And this request came from everyone, not just the emerging leaders, not just the young leaders, not just the people entering the workforce, but from seasoned leaders like presidents and vice presidents and directors, CEOs. They want more leadership training. They want to be better leaders, and they're looking for ways to do that. We also then look at subject matter experts, and we globally go to market through value-added resellers, consultants like Hanu and Sammy, and we are able to work with them to beta test and pilot things. How many of you have beta tested a program for us? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, because without your support, we wouldn't be able to get the information that we need to create the products that are meeting the market need. So we go through a lot of people and we have them look at our products before we publish them. We have them take our training resources and practice them and use them in a classroom, and we get feedback. And every time we get feedback, we make improvements and we make it better and better and better. And with Work of Leaders, we did 5 rounds of what we called beta testing. So each time we took the feedback and made changes to the product, made changes to the assessment, we made changes to the facilitation resources, and each time it got better and better until we had people say, when can I get this? And that's a clear indicator to us that it's ready for market. All right, so today we're going to be just highlighting the model of vision. We're going to be talking about these best practice behaviors. These are things that effective leaders do and they do well. So these are the things you want to do as a leader. We're going to talk about crafting a vision, building alignment around that vision, and championing execution. So let's begin by talking about the work of leaders in terms of vision, alignment, and execution. And I think everyone received a copy of the book, so I hope that you enjoy that. Everything that I'm talking about today is actually in the book. So as you continue in reading that, and then also everyone either had the opportunity to take the assessment, so you have a personalized assessment with you that you picked up when you came in, or if you didn't have time to take it, I think you were given a sample assessment, and you'll be able to take it at whenever you can. It's important that we understand with leadership that every leader at every level in the organization is responsible for crafting a vision. It's not just, a lot of people assume, well, that's the president's job or the CEO's job to craft a vision and tell us where we're going. And every leader at every level of the organization is responsible for thinking about what's my vision? What's my department's vision for the area of the company for which I'm responsible? What's my vision? And when we look at vision, effective leaders are very good at exploration. They're very good at being bold in their thinking, and they're very good at testing their assumptions. So we're going to look at each one of these. When we think about exploration, this is a puzzle. Anybody ever put together a puzzle? With puzzle? Yeah, they're fun, aren't they? But if I took away the box and just gave you the pieces, you might struggle putting together the puzzle. It would be hard, wouldn't it? Because we need the picture. We need to see what we're putting together. Sometimes when you start a puzzle, you work on just the border first, so you get the border in, and then maybe you're working on one section while your partner's working on another section or the children are working on another section. But everybody is looking at the picture. Maybe I'm just putting together the flowers. I'll do the flowers. But if we don't stay focused on the big picture, we're never going to put this puzzle together. We're going to have all these bits and pieces. So as leaders, when we're exploring things, it's really important that we prioritize the big picture. We don't want to dive into the details. We want to stay big when we think about prioritizing the big picture and thinking big. The second thing that leaders do well when they're crafting a vision is they're very bold in their thinking. Dr. Mark Scullard, one of the co-authors of The Work of Leaders, teaches at the University of Minnesota. And over the course of about 12 semesters, he ran a little experiment with his students, much like an auditorium like this or a theater. And he said, I want you to guess how much time elapses between when I say start and when I say stop. And I want you to write your answers down and hand them in, and we'll collect them. And he did that, and not surprisingly, the results formed a bell curve, right? So there was kind of a common thread there, and then there were some outliers here and outliers there, but most everybody kind of guessed an average response, which was fairly close to being accurate. But he did the experiment a second time, and this time it was towards the end of class, and the students are ready to be on their way, and he said, instead of writing your answers down, we're just going to call them out. So he ran the experiment, start, stop, and then he called on people. How much time? 8 seconds, 9 seconds. And she might have thought, well, I thought it was more like 14, but I'm not. They said 8 and 9, 10, 9, 10, 8, 7, 8. What's happening? It's called conforming, right? It is built into our DNA to not look stupid. Nobody wants to look dumb, right? So we tend to say what other people are saying, even if we think something differently. And the point here is with leadership, when you are being bold and crafting a vision, you have to have the confidence to speak out, to say what you think. And sometimes that takes courage. Because maybe you have an idea or a thought that's so different than anyone else's. You have to have the courage to speak out and be bold in your thinking. All right? The third thing that leaders do when crafting a vision is they test their assumptions. And this is sort of counterintuitive. A lot of leaders, they have a good idea, they're excited, and they just go. But effective leaders slow down at this point, and they test their assumptions. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a little math problem this morning. Are you ready? It's early, I know. Try to solve this problem. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Anybody? Nobody wants to look stupid, right? Anybody think it's 10 cents? Yeah, a lot of people think it's 10 cents. As a matter of fact, 80% of an audience will say it's 10 cents. And it's not my intent to make you look stupid, but it's not 10 cents. It's hard, isn't it? The correct answer is actually 5 cents. I know some of you are like, huh? Let me do the math with you. If it were 10 cents, if the ball cost 10 cents, the bat would cost $1.10. And if you add those two together, you get $1.20. So it's not 10 cents. It's 5 cents. So the ball cost 5 cents. The bat costs $1.05. 5 cents plus $1.05 equals $1.10. So it's not my intention to make you look stupid. But what's happening here is I suspect that every single one of you would have figured it out if I had given you the time to check in with each other and counsel with one another. You would have figured it out. I have confidence that you all would have figured it out. But sometimes it takes pausing and thinking about it and checking in with others. Well, do you think it's 10 cents? Well, no, let's do the math. What do you think it is? So what effective leaders do when they're crafting a vision is they pause and they get input. They talk to other people and say, what have we missed? What haven't we thought about? What assumptions have we made that may be wrong? So this is an important part of crafting a vision, and a lot of leaders don't do this. They hurry past this because they're so excited to get on with their great idea. But effective leaders take the time and seek counsel and get input. So here we have our 3, and these are just some of the best practice behaviors. There are actually 3 additional best practice behaviors. And in your assessment that you took, you'll have a page on each one of these with your personalized data. So for example, on page 9, this is all about exploration. And you can see where you are on each one of these continua. And the best practice behavior is always going to be on the right. That's the behavior that you want to be using. And if you're over here on the left, it doesn't mean that you're not a good leader. But you'll be a better leader if you start using the behavior that is on the right of that continuum. So there is one page on page 9 for exploration. Page 10 is boldness. And page 11 is testing assumptions. So you can see exactly where you are and what kind of things you need to be doing to improve your leadership when it comes to crafting a vision. So as you think about your leadership style, I want you to think about what can you do or what are you doing to be an effective leader when it comes to crafting a vision. Are you good at this? Are you good at some of it? When you look at your profile assessment, maybe you're very good at exploration, but you're not very good at testing assumptions. So you can be a better leader by improving those scores and those skills and adopting those best practice behaviors that are on the right side of the continuum on pages 9, 10, and 11. All right, so let's talk about building alignment. This is interesting because a lot of leaders understand how important it is to build alignment. Alignment is getting everybody kind of we have a saying of get everyone on the same page, or singing from the same songbook. You want everyone focused on the same thing. That's what building alignment is about. And a lot of leaders understand that it's really important to do this, but they don't know how to do it very well. And as a matter of fact, when we looked at alignment, we understood we were trying to get at people who, effective leaders, have very crisp messages, so they're very clear in their messaging. They create dialogue with their followers, and they provide inspiration. So we wondered, why is it that people don't do this very well? We know it's important, right? And we thought about, well, do people actually get trained in alignment? So we asked the question, in your leadership development, how much training or guidance have you had in the area of alignment? Has anyone ever gone to alignment school? Probably not. Or taken a class just on alignment? No, we know it's important, but we tend not to focus on building alignment. And like you, most people in our study have had none or just a little bit of formal training on alignment. But it's so important. This is the one area when we look at our database of everyone who has responded to the Work of Leaders assessment, alignment is the one area with the lowest scores. The lowest scores. So what does it take to build alignment? Number one, it takes clarity. Clarity is when a leader actually can explain what it is that we're doing. And you have to explain it very clearly. It can't be a big, long, windy story that nobody can follow. It's helpful if it's bullet points or just 3 things. And it also really helps if you explain the rationale or the reason behind what you're doing. There was a Harvard researcher by the name of Ellen Langer, and she did a study back when photocopiers were not readily available. Does anybody remember that? You're too young. We used to have to go to public places to use a photocopier. Anybody remember that? So now it's like the TSA line, the security line in the airport when you wait in line to go through security. Well, Dr. Langer did a study where there was a long line or queue of people waiting, and she went up to the very first person in line and she said, "Excuse me, I need to make some copies. Can I go ahead of you?" "Excuse me, I need to go ahead of you." How many people would let her go ahead? In the study, 64% of the people said, "Sure, go ahead." Now in Finland, it would probably be higher than that because you're so polite. Yeah, 0. That's not what I heard. 64% of the people said, "Sure, go ahead." But she did the experiment a second time, and this time she gave a reason for wanting to go ahead. She said, "Excuse me, I need to make 5 copies. May I go ahead of you?" It went to 90% of the people said, "Sure, go ahead." Simply because she gave them her reason. I'm in a rush. Who's not in a rush? But she gave them the rationale. And that's important because as leaders, when we are moving forward with something, a lot of times we forget to explain to people why it is we're going there. In our case study this morning, why was it that they were investing in customer service training? Every employee, I suspect that every employee knew what they were doing and why they were doing it. So make sure as a leader that you're explaining to people the reason or the rationale behind what you're doing, because they're going to be much more likely to follow you and to be on board with you. The next thing that's important when it comes to leadership and building alignment is dialogue. Now, dia means 2, but it's not one person talking and the other person listening. That's not dialogue. Dialogue actually means the exchange of perspectives, the exchange of ideas. And leaders understand that to get alignment, you have to let people ask questions. You have to have town hall meetings so people can feel like they're part of this. You have to let them express their ideas and their attitudes towards something. You have to let them offer suggestions. That's sharing perspectives. And a lot of leaders just think, you know what, this is where we're going. I'm going to tell people where we're going, and they're all going to follow me. And sometimes when you look behind you, you don't have anybody following you. Well, then you're not leading. So we have to make sure as leaders that we're creating the opportunity for exchanging perspectives. to build alignment around that vision. And then the third thing that happens when we talk about alignment is the ability to inspire your followers. Yeah, that's a wedding ring. So there's a psychologist, researcher by the name of John Gottman. And I know you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with leadership? But if you think about it, there's a relationship here, right? So John Gottman did a study where he actually videotaped couples interacting with one another, and he watched 3 minutes of the video. 3 minutes, that's all he watched. And after 3 minutes of watching this couple interact with one another, he could predict with 90% accuracy whether that couple would stay together or split. 90% accuracy. Anybody here in a relationship? Okay, would you like him to videotape you and your partner? I'm thinking no. But what he was looking for, what was his secret? All he was looking for was a ratio of positive exchanges to negative exchanges of 5 to 1. So 5 positive exchanges, comments, complimenting, saying nice things, to 1 negative comment, and he predicted that that couple would stay together. If it was anything less than that, he predicted that couple would be divorced or split. Now, you're probably not married to the people that you work with, the people, your followers, but they might quit the company. They might resign and leave the company, right? Or worse yet, they might quit and stay. They might quit, but stay working there. And that's worse than somebody leaving your organization or your company. So as a leader, we have to make sure that we're providing inspiration by giving people the encouragement that they need. Leaders need to have a ratio of encouraging comments to directing and telling and redirecting of 5 to 1. Think about it. What's your ratio? I have to work on this. I know that my ratio with my team is not always 5 to 1 unless I'm really working on it. So here we have alignment. So this is building alignment. We've talked about a couple of the best practice behaviors. We talked about clarity, explaining the rationale with copier, or the TSA line. It works for both. I've duplicated that research. We talked about exchanging perspectives in a dialogue, and we've talked about being inspiring by being encouraging. So again, in your assessment, you're going to have 1 page for each one of these things with the continua for these best practice behaviors. And if your score is on the right, then you seem to do that fairly well. If your dot is on the left, then you have some work to do because you want to come over to the right. The right is right. The right is correct. The right is the best place to be. So you have 1 page for clarity. You have 1 page for dialogue. Page 14 is for dialogue. And page 15 is for inspiration. So as you think about your leadership and what you're doing with your followers, think about, where are you? What are you doing to build alignment in your organization? Are you keeping track of things? Are you helping people understand where it is you're going? Again, in our case study, that's how Elko became a great place to work, is they do this well. They clearly do this well. People are aligned with their vision. Everybody from people who are stocking the shelves to people who are doing customer service to the marketing people, they are all aligned. They're all working towards the same goal. All right, lastly, execution. This is where a lot of leaders assume that this isn't their job, that this is the job of the managers and the people who are doing the work, and they go off to the next thing. But with execution, this is about getting it done. And the leader has to stay engaged. The leader has to be able to provide momentum, structure, and give people feedback. So let's talk about momentum. Do you have these above ground swimming pools? Anybody ever swam in one of these? Yeah, okay. You don't have these in Finland? Okay, well then you have to get out and go to some other place. But let me tell you about these. The above ground ones are always circular, because they have to be, otherwise the physics wouldn't let the pool hold together, right? So we have this circular swimming pool. It's filled with water. Jump in with me. Jump in. And let's all start walking around in the same direction. Are you with me? What are we doing? What's going on? The water is moving. It's actually creating a whirlpool, isn't it? So the water is moving, and if we decide we're going to stop walking, what will happen? The water keeps moving. We can float in it. We can try to walk against it. It's kind of fun. But it keeps moving. That's momentum. That's momentum. So what does this have to do with leadership? Leaders have to create momentum. They have to get things moving. Even if they jump out of the pool, if you jump out of the pool, the water is going to keep moving. And just like with leadership, you have to get things going, and they will keep moving if you create momentum. So let's imagine that we were going to raise our customer satisfaction scores from 72 to 84. That was our goal. Momentum means you're going to keep track of it. Maybe you're going to have a big diagram in the break room or in the entrance of the company so people can see, how are we doing? That's momentum. So having these indicators or having people share in the progress, that's momentum. Reporting on where we are. If we were trying to open 10 new offices, how many have we opened so far? How are they doing? Have people share information. That's momentum. And that's an important part of leadership. And a lot of leaders kind of bail at this point. They stop leading because they're on to the next thing. So we have to make sure that leaders are initiating that action to get that momentum going. The next thing that leaders need to pay attention to is creating structure and having plans. And again, this is more detail than some leaders want to participate in. Does anybody know who this cartoon character is? Okay, so we have the Roadrunner over here on the left. This is the Roadrunner. And this is Wiley Coyote. So if you've ever watched Wiley Coyote and the Roadrunner, you know that Wiley Coyote is trying to catch the Roadrunner. And he uses some really elaborate schemes. He takes hollowed out carrots and fills them with nitroglycerin. It bombs up, things blow up. Does he ever catch the Roadrunner? Never. Why? He has some great plans. But he never takes the time to analyze the plans in depth. Like he does things with boomerangs, and if he analyzed a boomerang, he'd understand that a boomerang is designed to come back to its owner, hit him. Or if he understood that by the time he throws that hollowed out carrot, the Roadrunner, who runs at a much faster speed than he can throw, is going to be long gone. He doesn't take the time to analyze things in depth, and that's why his plans fail. So as leaders, if you don't take the time to analyze things, your plans could fail. And this means we have to not only analyze what will happen if things go poorly, we also have to analyze what will happen if things go exceedingly well. I worked with a company on a consulting basis, and the company actually failed. Not because I was working with them, but they failed because they were so successful. Their product was so in demand that they couldn't meet demand. And people got frustrated. And they never had a plan in place for what if we sell twice as many of these as we forecast? What if we sell 10 times as many of these? What if people in other countries and communities want what we have, what we're selling? What will happen? How will we meet the demand? There's a company in Minneapolis. It's actually a brewing company, and they created a beer, and they started their distribution, and it was very well received. The company is called Surly. Very well received, and they started in the Midwest in Minnesota, and they ended up, because their success was outpacing what they could do, they shut down territories. They stopped selling beer in Wisconsin. They stopped selling beer in Ohio so that they could get things right, and now they're just going back and entering those markets again. So they had a plan. They analyzed things in depth so that they could manage that success. All right, the last thing is when leaders talk about championing execution, they're very good at giving each other feedback, giving people on the team feedback. There's a company, and I think most of you will know this company. It is based in the States, but there's a group of artists that every day work really hard, and they draw things and create things, and then they get together the next morning at 9 a.m. and they give each other feedback. They tell each other what's not working with that diagram you did, or what's not working with that character, or how could you improve that particular image or that illustration. Every day. They call them critique sessions or feedback sessions. And this company is very successful because they have a culture in which they give each other feedback. You want to know the company? Pixar. Anybody ever watch any of these movies? Yeah? Can you name them? Okay, you can do it in Finnish. I won't notice. So it's Incredibles, Ratatouille, Toy Story, Bugs Life, Cars, Wally, Monsters, Up, and Nemo. Yeah. They're all excellent movies. And the way Pixar creates high quality movies is during that execution process, they're giving each other feedback. They have a culture of giving each other feedback. So you have to think about yourself as a leader is how good are you at addressing problems before they get down the road? I mean, Pixar doesn't release a movie and then say, oops, that wasn't good enough, and recall it. The movie's out there. So how do you as a leader make sure that you're addressing problems? And many of us don't like to address problems because it's hard to say, that's not going to work. It's hard to say, I think you made a mistake in your analysis. It's hard to say, it's good, but I think it could be better. But that's what we have to do as leaders when we're talking about execution. So there's our things for execution, for championing execution. We talked about momentum and initiating that action in our swimming pool. We talked about structure and making sure we have an in-depth plan, like Wiley Coyote. And then we talked about addressing problems by giving people feedback, like Pixar. And again, when you think about your leadership, you have the opportunity to look at these pages in your assessment. You're going to have one page on momentum, page 17. And again, the right side is the good place to be. You'll have one page, page 18, on structure, and one page on feedback, page 19. So as a leader, think about how can you be more effective when it comes to championing execution? How can you improve your ability to lead by providing momentum, by giving people structure, by giving people feedback? So this is our entire model. And I didn't want to, I want to point out that I've only talked about half of the things in the model. So everything is detailed not only in the book, the Work of Leaders book, but also in your assessment. You're going to have 3 sections of the assessment, one on vision, one on alignment, and one on championing execution. And you'll be able to see where you are on each one of these best practice behaviors. So we talked about prioritizing the big picture. We did not talk about remaining open, and that's the other best practice that effective leaders do. We talked about speaking out. We did not talk about being adventurous and how you can do that. So please make sure that you go through your personalized report and whatever Hanu said and finish about the report, I don't know. So take a look at that. Because really at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is be better leaders. And we all have the capability, and it shouldn't be something that is so complex that you have to refer to the manual or think about what to do. So if you can just remember 3 simple things: craft a vision, build alignment around that vision, and champion execution of the vision. And with that, you have both the book and the assessment to guide you. And I wish you well on your leadership journey. Thank you.